Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. Got special guest Freddie with me. Good morning, Fred.
Morning.
All right. Today we are going to be talking about interest rates, and where the Federal Reserve is going to be moving their interest rates here on Wednesday is on everybody's mind. The common narrative out there is that the Federal Reserve is going to be putting the interest rate somewhere around 4.5% on the Fed funds level. That'll be around a quarter-point percentage rate rise. And this is going to impact the markets pretty dramatically. Most people are under the impression that the raising of interest rates is going to slow the consumer down, as there will be less available credit out there for people to borrow and go out there and spend on houses, cars, going on vacation and stuff like that. Now, typically, the Federal Reserve would try to establish these interest rates using the effective fund rate. Now, the Fed fund rate is a target rate. It's as if they had wrote it on the wall and said, okay, this is what we're shooting for. The effective fund rate is what that actual interest rate is. And typically, they would use the interest on overnight lending from the big banks. And every night at the end of the day, the big banks, some of them would need excess reserves, some of them would be in need of reserves. The one who had excess reserves would lend them to the ones in need of reserves, and that overnight lending rate would be the effective fund rate. They've moved that over to what they call interest on excess reserves in the repo facility. Now, this is something that's interesting to think about because it's an abundance of money that's within the system, and that the scarcity of money that used to establish the Fed funds rate or the effective funds rate at the big banks level has now been moved over to that Fed funds level, or the interest on excess reserves over at the Federal Reserve itself. Now, typically, this is how we understand how interest rates move up and down, is by the Federal Reserve manipulating the interest rates themselves. Something that I found interesting is in Cantillon's essay, we learned something very differently about how interest rates go up and down. Now, Freddie, please explain to us, what is it that's happening when interest rates go up?
It's the entrepreneurs, because they're borrowing types of interest so they can get materials to help their business to turn around and sell it.
Wow. Okay. So when interest rates are going up, you're telling me that's the entrepreneurs who are getting into it?
Yes.
And they're driving the interest rates up by borrowing money so they can do what?
Yeah. Sell it.
Borrowing the money and doing what with the money?
Buying materials.
Buying materials and stuff?
Yeah,
and
to help their business and yeah.
And so all these entrepreneurs out there, they're the ones who are driving the interest rates up.
Yes.
Interesting to think about. Well, what's happening when the interest rates go down?
The money lenders, because there's a lot of them.
So when there's an abundance of money in the system for the money lenders, here, careful with that, with the money lenders trying to find a place to put it, that's where the interest rates go down?
Yes.
That's very interesting to think about, because that's very different from what we have learned from the Federal Reserve and what we typically think about interest rates. Because when the Federal Reserve lowers the interest rates, we think that typically gets people out there borrowing money so that they could go out there and buy things. But what you're saying, when the interest rates go down, that's more money lenders out there trying to find a place to put it.
Yes.
And now, when we think about borrowing money so that we could go out there and buy things, we always think about like having the best interest rate when we do that. But what you're saying from Cantillon's essay is that when we see the entrepreneurs getting excited about being able to do business, they're out there borrowing money, driving the interest rates up.
Yes.
It's very interesting to think about. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into this subject and talk a little bit more about it. If you join the channel at Uneducated Economist membership, you will find a link down in the description of this video for it. We will go into a much deeper dive of this topic and get a better understanding of what it is that Cantillon was trying to describe. And Mr. Freddie, thank you so much for helping us understand a little bit more about what's causing interest rates to go up and down. Uneducated Economist?
You let me know.